Hello and welcome to the Bellingham Real Estate Podcast. I'm Paul Balzotti. I'm here with Irena Lambrou.
Good morning.
Good morning, Irena. Irena's second time on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, back and first time in the new studio, which is a new office, which is fabulous. And today we're going to talk about Bellingham parks and trails. I'd say primarily we're going to talk about Bellingham trail systems and then also how they relate to the different neighborhoods. If you live in Bellingham, you might learn a little thing or two here, but this is primarily for people who are relocating to Bellingham and want to learn how the trail systems, where the trail systems are, how they interact with the neighborhoods and all that. And I am having you on because I know that you're a major trail user. Major trail, I don't know if major is the right word, but regular trail user.
I would say regular.
Avid,
regular, and I often give people directions on the trails. So I would say a lot of people move here, are excited, they get out there, and then they get lost. So I would spend a lot of time on the trails. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's such a great topic because the trail system is such a huge part of, such a huge amenity for Bellingham. Yeah. I think that people know there's trails here, but they don't know until they get here how expansive the trail system is. And what were you saying before we were just getting on, that the trail system all of it talks to each other, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive trail system. So you could you could start your morning coffee at Swanage Park and then make your way all the way around Bellingham through Fairhaven, all the way back through Boulevard Park and make your way to Swanage again, pretty much on trails. And I think some of this conversation started with doing this episode, and I used to be a pretty big trail runner, and now I'm a little bit more of a light trail runner and do some mountain biking too. But there's one point where we ran from Blanchard, which is south of here, in another county, and then we ran all the way to Barkley, Hagen. So that's about 36 miles on trail, and I think we had 1 mile of road running. And I know there's a 40 or 50 mile mountain bike loop that you could do all on trails through Blanchard, Chuckanut, Galbraith. So you could be on your bike, your e-bike, your feet, your legs, as long as you want or as short as you want through Bellingham and beyond.
Yeah, and I want to, and we'll break down a little bit, the areas. We could maybe we'll circle to the end about if somebody was motorcycling or motorbiking, but primarily, these trails are for walking, jogging, biking, and then there's mountain biking trails, which are a little, they're a little bit different, right? Obviously, Galbraith being the biggest. But let's just kind of start with, for you, what is your favorite place? Let's just start with your favorites. Where is your favorite kind of go-to trail system? And then they're going to be different for me because you just explained you're pretty hardcore.
I used to be.
Okay. But you mountain bike too. Yeah. And I have a mountain bike, so I look like I can look like I know what I'm doing. But I'm more of the how do I jog or walk 2 miles person and then go just putz around. Yeah. So I'm the amateur person here, and then so I'm going to speak to more of that crowd. I actually probably more of I'm probably more in line with maybe somebody who's, retired, who's not very active. That's probably more my speed on the trail systems. And then you're
joking.
And you're the 40 mile, you're the 40 mile person who's like, yeah, I just, let me tell you how you can run from Skagit County all the way through the entire city of Bellingham.
So it's the whole spectrum. I think that, even though we're joking and laughing, if your MO is out for a few, a mile or just going for a walk, we have that. And we have things for the most avid adventurous as well. And it's right in our back door. So yeah, even though we're laughing about you.
I'm serious. No, that's the point is we do have it all. So let's break it down. So what is your favorite go-to trail system right now?
My favorite go-to run, I'm a newer mom, so I don't have a ton of time, but when my friends reach out, hey, where do you want to go for a run? It's almost always $2 Chuckanut around Fragrance Lake. If it's the summer, we're jumping in. I'm not a cold plunger. And then, you're kind of in and out in an hour, and you get tons of elevation gain. And it just is beautiful. You have the view of the water and Dot Island, and it's just peaceful back there. So my go-to is $2 trail on Chuckanut.
Yeah, Fragrance Lake.
Yeah.
Just kind of, if you Google Fragrance Lake, you'll see that system, which is super beautiful. Yes, absolutely. So, and that's a really cool one to start with, because that's kind of just south of the actual Interurban trail system in Bellingham. So let's kind of work our way north from there. So then
Hold on. So just to give folks from out of town a little bit more detail. So the Chuckanuts are part of the Lambrou Park trail system, and so the Chuckanut Mountains that's the mountain, and that is where the Interurban from the south ends. So it ends, or you could start there. You could park your car and start at Lambrou State Park, and Lambrou State Park is beautiful. They just redid the trail that goes all the way down to the water. So I would highly recommend exploring that trail that leads you down to the big long beach. So you could start there, and yeah, the Chuckanuts in and of themselves, mountain biking accessibility, running, walking, hiking. There are trails that you can't have a bike on, and then there are trails that are mountain biking specific. So if you're doing one or the other, I would always say know what the accessibility is. If you're a walker or a runner or a hiker and you're on a mountain biking trail, it could get, people are going pretty fast down the downhill trails. So you just want to know, if you're newer to the area, what trails you're on. And you should also know, and we can talk about it as we go, what trails are dog friendly and what trails aren't. Some of our trails you can't have a dog on. So, just always know before you go.
Yeah. And so that would be, neighborhood wise, that would be obviously
Chuckanut Drive.
But then we'd go to Edgemore.
And then you can take the Interurban, which is a gravel trail. So you could be on a gravel bike, you can be on a regular bike, you could be on an e-bike, or walking or hiking. And so from Lambrou State Park into Fairhaven, it's 7 miles. And so as you're walking along Chuckanut Drive, you will come into Edgemore. There's also the Chuckanut Village, a small subsection, really nice neighborhood down by the water. And then there's Edgemore, and then you'll kind of pop out into Fairhaven.
Yeah. So that's that system right there.
Yep.
You just got into it. And then to your east would be Happy Valley neighborhood. So Happy Valley and Fairhaven, which in Happy Valley kind of borders Fairhaven Park.
Yep.
Right. Which is kind of spits right out from that same system, right?
Yep.
And so, and would you say that, and so you're saying in the Fairhaven Park system of trails that come out from there, that's a combination of some dog-friendly trails and some mountain biking trails. There's both there. You say, is that fair to say?
Yep. And then as you're going along the Interurban, between the Interurban heading into Fairhaven and Fairhaven Park, there's a smaller acreage that is now a city park designated, that we affectionately call the 100-Acre Woods. And I think that's actually its real title now, kind of like from Christopher Robin, the 100 Acres with Pooh Bear. But that trail system is pretty extensive as well. A lot of people can get lost back in there. There's a lot of little offsets. But now that it's a city park, we ask that you have your dogs on leash and you pick up after your dogs and all those things. But you can bike through there. But that's also a great area to explore with kids, kind of slow down and just enjoy the beautiful canopy of the trees. And so that's South Neighborhood, Happy Valley, Edgemore. It's about, 5-minute walk to all of those.
And before we leave the South Side, there's also access to get down to the beach too, right?
There's access to get down to the beach. Along Chuckanut Drive, along Chuckanut Village, the neighborhood puts you out into Mud Bay. And a little, insider knowledge. I've been driving around with someone new to town, and she's like, wow, every trail in town. And I don't even think she wants to know about the trails, but I'm always telling her about all the trails. Unsolicited. So Edgemore, there's a great trail called Clark's Point. So if you're ever in the Edgemore neighborhood, you can walk Edgemore. It's not a trail. But if you go down to the end of Edgemoor, you can't park there, so you have to walk to it. But there's a beautiful trail called Clark's Point. And a lot of people go cliff jumping off of there in the summer. And it's also has this beautiful, really large madrona trees. So it's a really peaceful place for a picnic and in an evening sunset. So that's Edgemoor, and that's, Fairhaven and Happy Valley neighborhoods. And then you can continue, and I think you have about 3 blocks from the Interurban Trail to Boulevard Park Trail.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's 3 road city blocks, and then you can get back on trail.
Right, going through downtown Fairhaven.
Yep.
And then of course, most people know, and it's just the classic. We always take when you live in Bellingham, when you have friends come into town, you always take them to Fairhaven so they can take the bridge trail over to Boulevard Park because it's such a beautiful, cool thing. Why don't we stay along the water? But I wanted to quickly mention also that when we're talking about all these different types of trails, and it's going to all sound a little bit overwhelming going through all of it. What's your favorite app? Because I think there's like All Trails, isn't that one of them? You don't use an app? Oh, you're not an app. You know what? Your app is like your noggin, like your brain. For me,
some people like Strava. I don't know.
Okay, so I think All Trails is the one that I.
Trail Forks is a great one. That's for mountain biking.
Yes.
And yeah, it is. And so I'm kind of just to our listeners and to our viewers. In my head, what we're kind of doing is doing a big loop around the city of Fairhaven via the trail system. You could also go, I'm trying to decide if we're going clockwise or counterclockwise.
I think we're going to go west, so that would be clockwise.
So if you went the opposite direction, you could get off of the Interurban the other way and go all the way through trails. So we'll go along the water and then keeping on. Yeah,
and I think what's important about the apps, though, is, again, this is the my side of the world where, like, when you go into these trails and you have your kids and you don't really, and you don't know what you're doing here, whether you're going to Galbraith or we'll get into, I guess we'll kind of finish at Galbraith,
we're going to finish,
which is a fun, Galbraith Mountain, obviously being a major mountain biking Mecca. We could finish with the prize, jewel of Bellingham, essentially. But those apps were critical for me because, I'm looking for what they call bunny trails, and so it's supposed to be for, 10 and 12-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds, but it's also for grown men who are scared on their mountain bikes too.
Bunny trails are for
grown men and women, yes, and who are scared. And so, so those apps can also give you an idea of what trail is for what.
Yes.
So you don't have to, you can use those apps for that. So, okay, so we're going along the water. So now
as we're along the water, you're starting out at Boulevard Park there. Right above you is the South Hill neighborhood.
Yeah.
So South Hill is overlooking the bay. It's a pretty popular neighborhood here, and they have easy access. Another insider local tidbit, if you want to get some, sometimes we have a cold winter day and you just really want to get that sweat going. So you can go from Taylor Dock and just run straight up South Hill on Taylor Avenue. And I don't know how many feet of elevation gain it is, but you will get such a workout. And you get to the top, it's a beautiful view of the whole bay. If you want to keep going, go down the Taylor steps and do laps like the firefighters up and down the Taylor steps.
Nice.
Which that's a whole in and of itself. You could go down Taylor steps and then head towards the Seaholm Arboretum. But we'll stay along the water here.
But let's just real quick. So Seaholm Arboretum, because we're not going to get into the interurban inner side here. So that is a fabulous trail system too. It's Arboretum for Seaholm neighborhood, Western Washington University.
Yep.
That's up on that hill with Western.
Yep. It's a lot of people are telling me, I still haven't gone there. There's a great lookout at the top. I can't remember what those are called, but you can climb up to the top of the tower and have a little lookout. And yeah, it's pretty biodiverse and a lot of little offshoots. So there's a lot of single tracked trail as well as the nice wide trails. So if you have a stroller or if you just want to get off trail with your dog or something like that. So Seaholm Arboretum is pretty fun place to explore.
So now if we go through Boulevard and we get to downtown area, we have to jump off, go through downtown, right? And then to get, so let's go kind of now through downtown. We're going west. What's the next move?
Okay. So you are on a trail. I can't remember the name of the road right there, but you'll probably be on road for about 3 blocks.
Like Eldridge and...
No, you'll probably be on a trail about 3 blocks until you come to the developed waterfront now.
Oh, yeah.
So you can loop around the Acid Ballpark and downtown Waterfront and still be on trail, and then kind of head out. You'll be on the road or on a sidewalk, depending if you're on a bike or if you're walking. And then you'll head to Zwanich Park. And from Zwanich Park, you can go up, I think you can get onto the railroad trail. And this is where it gets a little funny, because there's the Beta Baker Trail that goes down to Little Squalicum Park, Waterfront, or there's Railroad Trail. And depending on which one you take, you could take Beta Baker to Cornwall Park.
Yeah.
And then keep going all the way around and then hit the Railroad Trail to Barkley and Barkley.
Yeah. And I think this is a good spot to stop and point out that
neighborhoods and stuff.
If you're in what we'd call like the core neighborhoods of Columbia neighborhood, Sunnyland neighborhood, through there, there's lots of little parks, and there is, if you're coming from pretty much anywhere, there is kind of, is there maps as far as like you want to bike through those areas? I mean, obviously you can road bike.
There are signs on the like near the roads. So there's little signs that'll tell you what trail you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's technically kind of inner road bike trails too.
There's still
cutting through.
We call the south side one the Interurban, but Beta Baker and then the Railroad Trail are also those gravel Interurban trails.
Okay.
So I guess maybe they used to just be the old railroad system or something.
Oh,
kind of like the in part.
Yeah. So, and then I think when you're in, correct me if you feel differently about it, but I think when you live in like York neighborhood, Columbia, lettered streets, I think that the trail system isn't necessarily, your walkability there is more about also
in city
access to downtown, and it's more of an urban kind of thing too, where you have more, you could still, lots of parks and waterfront access, but it's more about kind of the walkability to shops and breweries and downtown and things like that. Whereas, I think part of the theme of this conversation is that even if a lot of people want to be there for walkability, things like walkability and bikeability and all that kind of stuff, but what's beautiful about Bellingham when we start going through all this is you really can live anywhere in Bellingham and have maybe better access than you think to a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Once you learn the trail system and if you utilize the trail system. But definitely best walkability is through these core older neighborhoods. And I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that before we go west. And then we're going to, if we go from there, you're going to basically, I guess from there you're kind of then heading out to Birchwood, and then there's not much of a trail system right there.
Yeah, so the Birchwood neighborhood has the Beta Baker Trail.
Beta Baker, which is mostly on and off roads.
Yeah. But it is that kind of gravel interurban. I think it runs along the Birchwood neighborhood, kind of what am I looking for there? The edge of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And other trails in Birchwood, I think once you get north of Birchwood, you're getting into the Cordata trail system a little bit more, which is also a great trail system with the Juliana Trail, and just they have about 4 miles of trail up in Cordata north of Bellingham. But if we stay on kind of that comprehensive loop and keep going, we could head back east on the railroad trail and head towards Barkley.
I would consider the Cordata neighborhood kind of its own little thing, wouldn't you? Because I kind of think that there's the trail system otherwise, and most of those amenities kind of cut off and then kind of cut back across central Bellingham, and then we can head east over to Roosevelt, and that's where we'll go now. But if you move to Cordata neighborhood, you do have that 4 mile loop. You do have the new Cordata Park. They've put in some more infrastructure for biking and walking and things like that, but that's a little bit more insulated from everything else in that sense.
It's a little bit more insulated, but I think that you can still, there are still small trail sections to get you out there. So or less traffic, like traffic areas if you're biking. Yeah. To kind of feel safe on your bike, to kind of go on the road and then pop pop back onto a trail. Like if you want to take northwest rather than Meridian, you could kind of stay on that and then jump on a trail real quick again.
That's true. Yeah,
because what we're talking about mainly is trail access without having, I feel like we're trying to talk about without having to drive to it.
Right. Exactly.
But you can still, even if you're north of town, I was thinking like there's some really great trails along the river.
Mm.
It's a, 5 or 10 minute drive. There's so many other trails beyond that you can drive to access. But these are more, you're jumping on your bike or you're walking out your door and you just want to get on a trail and go. So, yeah.
Yeah. So now we're cutting across to Roosevelt and then Barkley, which is where we are right now, and Alabama Hill and Whatcom Falls Park and all of that. So that whole area, which, I mean, that's kind of where I spent most of my time on the trails because I live in Silver Beach neighborhood. We obviously work here. And I would say that this trail system, you have Barkley Village that it kind of centers around as far as a place to bike or walk to. All the trails kind of lead into Barkley Village, and then you have, or they all lead into Whatcom Falls Park, just south of Barkley Village.
And that would be the railroad trail.
That would be we'd call that the railroad trail.
The railroad trail connects you from Barkley all the way up to Blodell, Donovan, Whatcom Falls.
Yeah, and I think that I would mention that, or I will mention, no, I will, that what I like about this part of the trail system is it's so broad and expansive, on this east side of town that, you can get to a lot of places relatively fast, and B, for people like me who just like to walk, bike, or jog, these are mostly wide, gravel trails that are really accessible for kids, dogs, all of those kind of things. And but all roads then can lead to the mountain biking on Galbraith from here too. So I mean, what would you want to add to this area?
I did just want to add. So we're talking about Barkley neighborhood right now. There are a few other offshoots. I'm trying to remember the trail that goes down to Whatcom Falls, not Whatcom Falls, to the waterfront. Mm-hmm. And then basically you can follow that up, along Ohio.
Yeah.
And then enter Whatcom Falls from downtown Bellingham. But I can't remember the name of that trail right now. But anyway, from Barkley, you can go straight to Blodell. So you cut over, there's a bridge that goes over Alabama. You can see the beautiful sunset. Silver Beach area, you have the Big Rocks Park.
Yeah.
And its own extensive trail system up in Silver Beach. So that's a whole other area to explore that goes over Barkley. Is it Barkley Boulevard or is that Britain? What's that road that you could go over? But sorry.
So
you're going up the hill, Barkley Hill. So if you go up Barkley Hill,
yes,
you can actually go to the opposite side, and there's more trails. That there's a pond over there. So there's a lot of access, on that whole
Blodell Donovan Park area throughout, and then up Barkley Hill, and then up to Silver Beach. Yes.
Yeah, throughout the whole area to explore. And then just a quick tidbit, if you're just moving here and you don't know too much about it, you could go all the way out, since we're at the lake, you could go all the way out North Shore and go to the Lake Whatcom, trailhead. There's the Chanterelle Trail.
Yeah.
And there's the along the lake 3 mile out. So it'll be a 6 mile round trip. It's a wider trail. It's gravel. That one's flat. The Chanterelle Trail is more of a hiking trail. And then there's more, mountain biking trails back in there and surf and turf and things. So if you want to be adventurous and go out on the lake, those are more. So we're going to keep going on our circle, though, from Whatcom Falls, Blodell, and then our crown jewel of Galbraith.
Yeah, and I think that when we're on this side, if you're moving to Bellingham, would you agree that, so as far as like if trail access, not just amenities for downtown and those kind of things, which is more the core neighborhoods where you have more walkability to more of those kind of amenities, if you're looking to just get out of your house and onto a trail, obviously if you're in Chuckanut, if you're in Edgemore, if you're along Fairhaven, Happy Valley, or South Hill, you have all of those accesses right there. But I would say other than that south neighborhood, I would say this east area, I would I don't have like the numbers here, but I think that there's the most trail accesses, most accessibility to the most amount of trail systems from just about any home. So if you buy a home anywhere in Barkley neighborhood, Roosevelt neighborhood, Alabama Hill, Whatcom Falls, that whole section, pretty much every street, you have multiple trail accesses within a quarter to a half mile.
Absolutely.
So the trail system is extremely expansive for all of those neighborhoods.
Yep.
So basically, when we head over from Barkley Hill, which you mentioned, then up over Silver Beach, and then we go back on Alabama Hill, you have Bloedel Donovan Park. I would say that's a really cool area because you have the Whatcom Falls Park access and
Lake Whatcom.
And Lake Whatcom, which is super cool. And then from there, you're so close to Galbraith. Whatcom Falls Park, we should talk about a little bit on its own. I would say that that's not really a mountain biking park, though. That's more, or is there some mountain biking that people do in there? I think of it more of as a jogging family kind of thing.
Jogging family. The single track would be, I mean, you could probably mountain bike it, but I think that a lot of people will park their car at Whatcom Falls and then bike up Birch.
Yeah, kind of heading. All the mountain bikers are heading to Galbraith from there.
There's playgrounds at Whatcom Falls. The reason it's called Whatcom Falls is that the CCC built this incredible bridge over the waterfall in the 1930s. So if you go there and it's winter and we have tons of water rushing, it's this beautiful waterfall on two sides. And then in the summer, a lot of people end up, it's kind of a local swimming hole. Plus the just walking around that park, it's just beautiful trees. There's, you could watch the salmon spawning and certain times of the year. There's the ducks in the pond. There's lots of offshoots, and then there's playgrounds. So there's lots of, amenities. And it's a great park to explore.
It's fabulous. It's definitely,
And there's some off-leash dog areas too. So, so that's good to know too.
Yeah, and I used to take my kids, like when you're under 14, I think, or under 12, they let the kids fish in the hatchery pond and in the little, so it's really neat. So you have that area, and then let's get into, so you got kind of Geneva, Whatcom Falls, and Puget, and Alabama Hill.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say those three neighborhoods, Geneva, Whatcom Falls, and, and then also Samish, all of these neighborhoods now all are kind of sitting below Galbraith Mountain. So talk to us about Galbraith Mountain, which is why a lot of people move here.
So in my mind, I just want to give a shout out to the Puget neighborhood. So Puget sits a little bit below Galbraith and the immediate surrounding neighborhoods, but it has its own trail system that comes up, and then you can access Galbraith from its own little back way. So Puget also has a trail system, which is good to know.
Oh.
And then, so you're at Whatcom Falls, you're heading up on Birch Street to Galbraith Mountain, and that's what we call the north entrance of Galbraith. I think it's the Miranda Trailhead. So Miranda Trailhead, it has a pretty steep climb up to Galbraith Mountain, and that is about, I would say, 20 miles of mountain biking access. It is currently still a working mountain, so they log, but we always get updates from the WMBC from when that's happening, so when to stay off the mountain. But it is some pretty world-class mountain biking, but it's also walker, runner, dog friendly. So and we can have class 2 e-bikes, I think. So as long as there's not a throttle, you can have your e-bike on the mountain. And I will double check that. Yeah. But I think it's class 2. But those are fantastic trails, whether you're riding all the way up to the towers and you're going to do more of a downhill ride and hit the jumps, or you can stay more mellow, which is my deal, cross-country riding, and get some great views as well. So it has a little something for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then if we head, let's say, down U Street, and then we cut, and you're right, there's going to be all sorts of, from Puget all the way down, there's going to be lots of access to the mountain. And it's worth noting that even when you look at the trail system maps, there's so many small little neighborhood, little trail access.
Their own access. Yeah.
So almost every one of these streets, somebody's like allowed something off their side yard or something to,
Totally.
so which is super cool too. So almost every neighborhood tends to have an access point.
Totally. So as you're coming down Galbraith, and I just wanted to give this side note, we'll talk about south entrance of Galbraith on the south side of Bellingham, running parallel to, how Paul just said, U Street. If you go down U Street towards Padden and you're not on Galbraith, there is its own extensive trail system called the Samish Crest Connector. And it's a really sweet trail if you've never explored it. Basically, you jump off from Lake Padden, which we'll get to in a second, go across the street. And then it's beautiful back there. And there's lots of hidden geocaches. Really interesting stuff you can find on Samish Crest.
Yeah.
And then you'll pop out so you can access Samish Crest from the Puget neighborhood or from the Lake Padden side. And that, you have the backside view of Seaholm Arboretum, and you get like this beautiful view of the waterfront as well. It's you kind of feel like kind of turned around, like, wait, where am I? You have this different view of the Bellingham Bay. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
That's a fabulous area. And then, so now if we go over down U Street, so I think probably, would you say the most popular access or the biggest access to Galbraith is probably that south side access? That's just it's easier to get on. That's for, again, the people like me with the little kids who are just trying to we just bomb down and the gravel road.
Yeah.
And it's flat.
Yeah. And
get right on those bunny trails.
Yeah, so as you're coming up and over Galbraith, you can end your ride or start your ride at the south side entrance, which now there's a nice big parking lot. There's a street crossing with a light, so it's nice and safe. And then
that's off Samish Way basically.
Yep, Samish Way. Yeah. And then that parking lot is also access to the hiking horse trails. And we haven't really talked about horse trails in Bellingham, but there are special access for horses. So the backside of Lake Padden is horse trail of, you could take your horse there, and off-leash dog area. So sometimes I'll park there and take my daughter just on a hike or dogs, or you can get on your bike and go to Galbraith. And again, like when you're doing this big round loop, you could, not even have to take a car. You could take the trails all the way through Lake Padden, the hiking trails, the horse trails, and then just jump on the trails to Galbraith and keep going. So we're just heading back south into Fairhaven now along Lake Padden.
Yeah, and I'll re-bring up that, there's multiple apps that will give you the actual rating of each trail and how difficult they are and what they're mapped for, which is super cool. And then now when you're going south, you're running into Lake Padden.
Yep.
And the Lake Padden trail system.
It's about 2.5 mile loop around Lake Padden, but then there's an extensive hiking trail system behind the loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be considered the South neighborhood and Samish neighborhood. Those two neighborhoods are going to kind of surround. And I would say that, and then you have that huge off-leash dog park, at Lake Padden Park, right?
Yep.
And so,
we are getting into some like Bellingham city limit areas.
Yeah.
But I would say there are still some main Bellingham neighborhoods that are right there. But
yeah, and I think for the kind of the people that just want to go for a nice walk, I think that probably that Lake Padden Park loop is probably about as popular as anything.
Paul asked me before we started this, what are your favorite trails? And in my head, how I decide on trails is very seasonally dependent.
Yeah.
So I have these trails that I frequent depending on the weather and the time of year. And, Lake Padden is like, it depends. Maybe it's a fall. It has its own little specialties. Summer, sometimes I go to Lake Padden to go swimming and stuff. But, I think about trails more in what time of year it is and what I like.
You're with and what you're doing.
Yeah. So it's funny. I think I have all these memories of Lake Padden and when I'm there, and yeah, it's a lovely spot. We're really blessed to have Lake Padden. There's no motorized boats on it. It's a great swimming hole. You could take your sailboat. You could take stand-up paddleboard. You could take your surf ski. It's really lovely.
Yeah, and that's like that's one of the trails where people will paint the rocks, and then so if you have kids, or even if you don't have to have kids to enjoy this at all. Yeah. Like just they'll paint the rocks and they'll hide them in certain places, and then and so there's this whole other thing going on. So there's this little sub thing going on with the painted rocks. I don't know if there's anything else like that, but
There's hidden ferry areas there.
Yeah.
So
Hidden ferries too. Yeah, that's right. I knew there was something else.
But if you take Lake Padden, there's a little offshoot as you go around the lake where the lake pours out and turns into a creek. So it's the Padden Creek, and that Padden Creek will follow all the way along, and it goes out into the ocean. But if you follow the creek, there's a trail. It's a beautiful trail that runs along the creek and the waterfall, and then that will continue down its own little trail. And I'm forgetting what neighborhood that's called, but we're not quite into Happy Valley or South yet. And then that's when, once you get out of there, there's about a half mile. There is a secret little trail. It's a little locals trail. So if you don't know that one, it's about a half mile to the Interurban. Otherwise, you can jump on a super backwoods trail to Hogue Pond. And then, so it's maybe a quarter mile. So depending on the trails that you want to take, you'll have maybe a half mile until you hit the Interurban again. And then you're back on the South Interurban, just like where we started.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's a lot. And it, you know what it's reminding me of is how much I need to actually hit trails more.
Well, we've made it through. We made it through daylight savings, and now we're back into the
go time.
Now it's go time.
And that's what's so great about the Northwest, as well as we get a lot of clouds, we get a lot of rain, but there's a lot of days, even this time of year. Right now, we're filming this in March, where this is a little bit of a dreary couple days here, but all it takes is just the clouds to clear, and you get these breaks where you can still go out and enjoy the trails. And so many of them are gravel and not just muddy. And there's still, half those trail systems, more than half the trails we're talking about, are really well developed gravel trails that you can hit year round, which is fabulous.
Yeah, and a lot of the trails have a great canopy too. So even when it's raining, you hardly feel the raindrops. So if you're, in some of the forested areas. A quick shout out to Sudden Valley.
Yeah.
So we didn't talk much about that. So Stimson, if you ever get a chance to hike Stimson, it's beautiful. You can't have your dog on Stimson. That is about a 6-mile loop. And, I think there's some old growth out there. So I'm just going to do a quick shout out to a few great areas. The backside of Galbraith is Sudden Valley. So you can access Galbraith Mountain from Sudden Valley if you're down there. A lot of people will, do the Cougar Ridge ride, end up at the backside of Galbraith with their bike, and then just take the bus back into town, because there's a bus stop right at that that one of the park entrances there. And so that's an easy way to do a big long ride and then get back into town. As you go out towards Mount Baker Wilderness, there are so many trails to explore too, but those are a little bit more of a drive. But and then there's just so much here.
And then Lake Samish has trails, and there's some potential
motoing.
Yeah, and so Lake Samish has its own stuff out there too. So well, this has been great, and hopefully, if you were listening to this, then I would really encourage you to go on YouTube and watch the video version, because we'll have some B-roll showing some of the maps and pictures and everything like that.
And reach out if you have questions, if there's something that you really are interested in doing, or trail wise, or if you're new to town, just reach out. We're happy to help.
Reach out to Irena. Thank you, Irena. Thank you for listening or watching, you guys.
Bye.